It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
With Barnet Bain. Good moment, everyone.
Good moment. How you feeling?
Boy, I feel really good.
Successful.
I do feel successful. I do feel.
We've decided to reimagine success around here.
Well,
so
it's funny.
What the heck does that mean?
Freeman is talking. He's referring to a conversation that we had earlier, and I will bring you up to speed very briefly on it. So we were out to dinner, and much talk. Not unusually in the world about success and what is success and people striving for success, and some folks experiencing chaos and challenges and to do with success. And so I began to wonder, well, what are the metrics of success? I understand that there are certain metrics of success that are making people, myself included often, anxious and uneasy. And those metrics of success, they have to do with
winning.
With winning or with outside validations of certain kinds, whether it's safety or security or money or status or approval or all the things that we do for love without knowing we're loved all along.
Right.
All of those things. And when we are in some sort of struggle relationship with them, they erode. We immediately go to the file cabinet called success, and we pull that out, and we have a whole history.
Start
of
passing out our
the
successes.
All the reasons to
Did
support.
you know I used to be a soap opera star?
However, you were, Drake Belson. So I am actually here with the Drake Belson, folks. So if you want a signed photograph, I know where to get one, not just on eBay. But it begs the inquiry into, well, if that is certainly one measure of success and it's a struggle recipe, there are other modulators of success and calibrations of success that have to do with finding resources not outside but inner resources, and so we started to make a list, and some of those inner resources have to do with, yes, we live in a world where there's abundant air and there's a nature and there's we have access, not necessarily ownership. We have access to resources that are physical and also mental, my thinking faculties, my body. And then there's also resources that are non-physical, the awareness of my relationships in my spiritual life, friends that are awarenesses and consciousnesses that are unseen, intimacy with my subconscious that is growing, with my unconscious, with worlds of unknown and other and liminal and archetypal energies, and on and on and on and on and on in a metaphysical cornucopia that is endless and unending, and all of those resources are relationships that I have access to, as well as intimacies with my strengths and my talents and my gifts, and intimacies with my friends and my relatives. And then there's even things like, at the bottom line, how deserving do I feel? As do I have a joy of deservability? That is a resource of a success. And then there is also a wonder. That is a real resource. The wonder of having fun. How that is a resource. How the energy of wonder. And on the other side of that wonder, there is the wonder of power with responsibility, not power over, not power to dominate, not power to control, but the power that emerges organically out of the awareness of all these resources of success.
So I love the reimagining of success, and I want to contribute because I've recognized in my experience the very same thing. I mean, we've obviously had the conversation where what I was handed as a prescription for success is insufficient at this point. It doesn't serve me. So,
But you got a diploma.
yeah, and I got a bunch of little statues.
Few statues and some wax around the head.
Yeah, a couple of plaques. And for me, what you were just saying, so self-awareness becomes one of the things that I say, yeah, self-awareness, that's something that I can say, yeah, that's a success there.
But it's a real resource that when we put our attention on it and honor it to the degree that we're willing to be changed by the acceptance of it, that frequency starts to show up as the trappings of our experience. We have a very special treat for our listeners today. On the phone with us from Israel today.
Nice.
So this is a very high-end produced show. We even have a budget for calls to Israel.
Nice.
As long as they're short calls. So it's like we have with us Thomas Hübl, who is a really, really fresh voice to, I think, to our listeners, and that I know you're going to enjoy. A teacher based, I think, some part of the year in Berkeley, California. We're teachers all over the world. We're very, very glad to have you with us here on Cutting Edge Consciousness this morning, Thomas.
Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, both of you.
So
I'm happy to be part of it.
Yeah, we're reimagining success today. We're looking at this concept that many of us have bought into in very narrow ways, and we're looking to expand a little bit from what we've maybe been taught and told to something that is more generous and more generative and so forth. So I know this is a big part of what you do. You travel around helping people, put down their small stories and expand into an ever-enlarging sense of possibility.
Yeah, that's true. And I think when I listen to both of you, so there are so many connection points to success for many people. But I think what I heard in the second part, that we actually discover the source of unlimited energy within us, or everywhere, basically. It's not just within us. That's actually a really exciting thing to explore. And as the Kabbalah says, I think that becoming equal to the force that creates you is dissolving into creation itself, and how this can be accessible for us and what we need to do for it. I think that's an exciting conversation.
Just the exciting. There's a frequency in that. I mean, we Barnett was sort of speaking earlier and noting, well, there's a frequency. There's a frequency in fun that we could equate with that. That's part of the success equation. There's a frequency in gratitude. That's part of the success. And there's a frequency in excitement. What lights you up? Well, that would be part of the success equation. So, the shift, though, in perspective, because most of us, of course, were taught to find it outside of ourselves. And while outside of ourselves is a mirror, it can just reflect back. We want to own, perhaps, what's inside of ourselves that has been lit, if you will, by whatever stimuli we are drawn to.
Right, and I think if we create a culture, which I would call potential-oriented or potential-based culture. So when I'm really interested in your highest potential and you are interested in his highest potential, and we are really creating a culture where we literally learn to see each other so deeply that we are really interested in the highest light that can shine, I think then we are laying a foundation for our generations and the next generations to come, that this inner unstoppable force of creating life, like the juice in the tree. So when this juice in the tree has unlimited energy available, so how would a culture look like if my spiritual practice, my inner work, my outer work in the world is really supporting people to blossom, even if it's uncomfortable for me, that you are growing to an extent that it scares me, that I get envious, and that I will want from one part of myself to shut it down again.
Wow.
So how would a culture look like where we all actually go beyond our limits of jealousy, envy, and so on, and fear, and we really want the humanity that is shining? so that the marketplace, the society starts to shine again. I think that's an interesting discussion.
Well, that would be a supreme act of creation. And I have a very dear friend who says, I love this, that creativity is love's work, that it's the only thing that is happening. And so when you are talking about people, each of us seeing ourselves and each other in the most expansive light, with holding the most possibility for ourselves and others. You alluded to what can come up, what does come up. What comes up are this whole menu of things below the surface, under the table that we hold. We like to think of ourselves as nice people, as good people, and we are. People are inherently good. But under the table there are hurts and competitiveness and strugglings and adaptive kinds of behaviors that come up and mitigate against they mitigate until they are dealt with. They mitigate against us being able to see ourselves in that way and others in that way. And so what are the kinds of resistances that you most frequently encounter in your work, and what are the kinds of ways that you support people in meeting them and recognizing them and owning them and releasing them and moving beyond them?
Right. So first of all, I think that a deep honesty with all the parts that we call shadows, and that we have a spiritual practice that actually that has the power to embrace shadows, to confront it, to also go down into the underworld and reclaim energy that cannot live. Because most of the struggling, I think, that we see in teams, in culture, in society, in institutions, everywhere where people work and live together, are actually that we are blind to certain parts of ourselves, and that we are blind in the areas where we hold back our power, energy, creativity, love, whatever. And so to have a culture of seeing, so I discovered that the more we induce in a group of people that we literally look at each other, and that we are becoming more and more naked energetically, which means more honest, more transparent, more present in the moment. So then we start to see together there's a power that we can create as a group, because not everyone is blind in the same spot. And I think one act of love is that we start reflecting each other where we cannot see ourselves clearly, but a group has a strong potential to do that. And I think relational intelligence, or relating, has a strong healing force. So if I want to live in a culture that is progressive, that is changing, so I need to be able to be culture, which means be like an expert in relating and also be an expert in change. So if I still, most of my life is informed by my past, so I will, by tendency, hold on to what I know. But if my motivation comes from what we call the future, the potential, the higher spirits, however we call it, I think then I am also able to enjoy change, enjoy development, enjoy evolution. And so if I'm able to live culture and to change, so I will naturally be a contribution of cultural change. And that's actually what we are looking for. We are looking for people who want to, develop the genius part inside, and also relate it deeply into the loving connection with the context that we live in, and make also a contribution. So to leave the narcissistic spiritual practice and to come to a serving spiritual practice.
You know what I love about this is, I think of it, we've used the analogy of a sandbox, right? That we're looking for people who want to play in this sandbox, this more expansive dream, if you will. I mean, I think even of John Lennon, singing "Imagine," the idea of imagining. You may say I'm a dreamer, and at this point we say, yeah, I'm a dreamer, and you're a dreamer, and we're all dreaming. And what is the dream? Is it expansive, Or is it tracking back to kind of a nightmare of a rehashed and replayed and stale version of, let's call it, success? It's exciting for me that we're looking for people to dream, to imagine this into existence.
We're going to have to put a pin in this dream.
Yeah.
Step aside. We're going to do some commercials and sell a few things and keep this show on the air.
Right.
So please, we invite you to, if you're in your cars, pull over. And we'll be back in 1 minute with our guest, Thomas. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. This is Barnet. I'm here with Freeman and our guest who is on the phone from Israel, Thomas Huebl. Before the break, or during the break, I was pondering some of what you said, Thomas. You were talking about what can happen when people work together in groups, what is expressed in the group body that is more accessible than what can be expressed, what can be discovered as easily by an individual. And it occurred to me that we so often identify ourselves as being inside these heads that we carry around on our bodies, more as often as not bodies that are disconnected from our heads. We're not necessarily aware to the aliveness in the bodies, much less in the extended body of the world. We are simply inside these mind loops. And that we have stories often about who we are as being inside my body, and then that inside my community and inside my world. And one of the insights that occurred to me as you spoke is that, of course, I am not inside my body. I am this group that you're working with. I am the whole group, and I am the entire domain of my world. I am that. It exists inside of me. Would you speak to that?
Yes. I mean, basically, I think in a very progressed, like spiritual realization, we would see the world like that, and just to open oneself to this possibility that I am not just the continuation of my past that formed me, and I'm not just this personality, but that there is that the beauty is actually in the realization of stillness, which is eternity, emptiness, and presence. There are many words for it, and at the same time movement. So I'm actually the movement that contains my body, my feelings, my thoughts, the group, the society, the planet, the universe, and at the same time I'm deeply, deeply rooted and grounded in the stillness that is ever present, that is just here, and it's going nowhere. And both is true. And I think if my spiritual practice and realization embraces both, so then I will literally be able to embrace what you said right now, and that's an exciting realization. But I would say it's already a high realization to live in a state that this is my actual experience of reality.
So I see this as a glimpse, right? A glimpse of possibility that's so inspiring and I'm so committed to that I'm willing to do what might be called sort of the heavy lifting. I mean, I'm going back a little bit to where you were talking about the spiritual maturity required to do some of the shadow work. Because for me, I know in the group body that there is, for me, there's a past that needs to be repaired, having to do with feeling manipulated by group dynamics where there's dogma or there's hierarchy. And so, the offer of a culture this culture you're talking about, where it's this possibility-based culture, is at once exciting to me, and in the same breath, terrifying, because there is still, at least for me, work to do in the shadow experience, the shadow play of group dynamics, where these less conscious tendencies were at play. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, totally. I know what you're talking about. And every company and every institution most probably knows about what you're talking about. And therefore I'm saying it's so crucial that we learn to embrace the parts that we are unconscious in and that we are acting from without sometimes knowing that we are acting from them.
Yeah.
And that if I live a spiritual practice, what I call in the marketplace, so if I'm not sitting in a cave in the Himalayas or in a monastery maybe somewhere in the Himalayan mountains, but I'm really participating in a cultural process. And this is also my work of awakening. So then I definitely have to look at my shadows, because they will definitely have an effect on my life and on other people's lives. And therefore I'm totally with you. I think that's crucial if I want to live a more awake life in a cultural process.
And it also, in my thinking, requires a kind of rigor, because even when we think we're operating in sort of more spiritual ways and we've developed practices, at least again in my experience, I watch how that can organize back to hierarchy, for example. I mean, the spiritual competition. Who's more spiritual? I mean, I'm laughing, but I'm not, because it's also a very sad thing that I think it requires a kind of rigor, again, in my own experience, because the tendency to track back to these sort of ways that we've operated in groups in the past.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And the forming of a so-called spiritual ego, that I just translate my competitiveness and my jealousy and whatever into my spiritual domain. So that's pretty usual, and therefore I think we need a context that is actually placing awakening as the first priority, and therefore creating a kind of a clarity that we can confront these tendencies again and again and again until they are so conscious that they will, be integrated. But I'm totally with you that that's a very important work.
So in that vision, which is I believe a nutshell description of everybody's destiny, self-chosen at some point, and if we haven't come to it being self-chosen, it is a part of the grand movement of things that I believe you were alluding to earlier. But there comes a point when it is self-chosen. We are consciously surfing a wave and learning to become adept at it.
We opt in.
And masterful at it, and learning to use it to contribute our own gifts to it. So what I hear you in my own funneling down of this, what I hear you describing is what I experience as becoming ever more conscious as I move literally through my subconscious. Ever more consciously aware of my subconscious, and that will unfold in its own way inside and outside of time, or maybe not. I don't know, but I do experience that that inquiry is itself, as I think you referred to, or maybe I just had some sort of a hit between the words. It's almost like a spiral of energy. It looks like a little galaxy floating in the infinite void of space, which of course is not at all empty. That field of subconscious is itself held in something beyond that, some stillness beyond that. You brought that up, and you brought that up for a reason. So I would invite you to elaborate a little bit about what is that mystical experience beyond the mystery of exploring the subconscious. Right.
I mean, as I look at the spiritual development, is that we are, if we go back, so to speak, and we collect the energy that we didn't really express of the development that we know. So we actually strengthen our base in order to live a more grounded and rooted life. And then we also use this energy as a fuel for the rocket to go further on the development of a human being, of a culture, of humanity, and so forth. But basically, we want to master what I said before. It's two dimensions: the timeless, ever-present being state that is shining through the conscious and unconscious parts anyway, and the process of creation. So how out of nothing something's arising, something needs to fulfill itself completely in order to return back into nothing. So when in the Tao Te Ching is written that when something arises, it needs to express itself completely in order to be quiet. Mm-hmm. So it describes a deep mystical principle, so that we are always that which is there before we were born, and we are also that which has been born and fulfills its destiny in order to come back into nothing. And so if I understand this mystical cycle, that I am always the white page, and I am the letters that are writing themselves and becoming the story of my life. So if I more and more deepen my awareness into these analogies, so I will literally master stillness and total movement, and I think both together is what we call an awakening.
I love that. And I love the recollect, to remember, which is, again, nice language too, to remember, to put back together from an empowered perspective some of the painful past as the launching into a way of embracing something that is so much bigger than the painful past, which is the possibility, the offer on the other side of all the ways that perhaps we've diminished or bought into a story that was diminishing of our true potential. It's
unknown on the other side.
Right.
As long as we're having these anchors into what was, we'll keep throwing it out into what we're calling
Well, I'm talking about a bigger context,
completely
which is the
unknown.
future.
It's completely uncertain. It requires a deep self-knowing, and then a courage to move into the unknown.
Yeah.
And to discover what I'm hearing what I'm experiencing as you speak. It's a realm of imagination that imagines itself. So I am a player in it. How that may precipitate, I don't know. We're having like a number of discussions all at once, all nested into each other. One has to do with becoming aware of our subconscious agendas and living into them with sufficient awareness so that we can be open to a presence and at one with something that is holding that, that is beyond, certainly, I don't have the hearing or I don't have the referent to be able to make any context for that, except that energetically I understand there's more. I'm being pulled into something more. And I hear that in your discussion when you allude to the stillness, when I hear, when I tap into the stillness, whether it's from what you're speaking about or I hear it elsewhere, I can have a sense of my own aliveness that has no story attached to it. And then what? So Thomas, and then what?
The vision.
And then what? A whole different set of calibrators of experience.
Absolutely. There is, I think, I often, when I give talks, I compare it to that once you are really courageous enough, willing, whatever, ready to jump into this unknown place, to the space in between the molecules, in the space in between thoughts, and the space in between the letters that is equally important than the letters to compose a life. So then it's my life. If I master it more and more, it will become like as if I'm walking on a rope or on a razor blade, and every moment I put down my foot, the ground appears. So, which means I totally trust. I learn to give myself and surrender to the movement and the intelligence of life, and at the same time, I'm also present enough to really walk one step at a time, but through this high level of presence and movement, life is emerging through me online. This means when I speak, there is an online speaking. When I walk and actions, it's aligned with the intelligence of the universe. And I think that's what I would call mastery of life. It's not just that we become still and that we can rest in deep states of meditation, but that we actually can walk this deep state of meditation also in and as actions and words in the marketplace. And I think it's a kind of a river that unfolds while I'm walking.
That's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Thank you for that. That is something for me to chew on all week.
Yeah. There's a tool. Tool feels a little brittle, but I'm going to use that language. You call first priority, and it's a way of regrounding and centering and bringing us organizing around the commitment to this expansion, to this consciousness you're talking about. And I want to talk about it for a minute, because when I first heard you, and I had the opportunity to research your work a little before you came on, this coming back to the first priority.
Right.
And I want to talk about that, because it's a powerful tool, because a lot of times everything you just said is beautiful, and then so easily we slip into something that's less than that. And so having a way of going, okay, first priority, what's the first priority? So I want you to just unpack that piece of your work for our listeners.
So the first priority is that I say I make awakening, or God, or however which name we gave it, or we are giving it. So if I make this my first priority, then it means the context for everything else that I do, being it my work, intimate relationships, family, whatever is out there, my friends, my mission in the world, needs to surrender to this first priority. And I think all our spiritual path is just working up to the moment that it clicks in. And once it clicks in, we're awake. And this is like when you shoot an arrow, and you're aiming into the center of the target, and in the moment you're really online and you let go of it hit already the target. And so I think when we are interested in consciousness and spirituality, in self-development, however, what's the access point for us, I think one day we need to ask ourselves the question, do I really want to make awakening my first priority, which is really demanding? It means 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, without any holidays. That's what I commit my life to. And that's a very powerful thing, but it's not just that of course many people would say, I want that. But then when we live our life and we run into difficult situations, we run into very ecstatic situations, and then we want to follow our addictions, whatever, the first priority is challenged quite easily, and then we discover, oh no, it's not my first priority. But to really reflect at the end of the day, so how was my day, and how much was awakening really my first priority? And the only thing that shows it is how my life looks like.
That's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful and profound. Hey, with that, I'm sad to say that we've come to a commercial break and time to say goodbye. I hope that you'll come back with us. I mean, I don't know if you make it to Los Angeles. I know you travel around the world, but my want would be to have you in studio and spend maybe even the whole hour with you, because your work is so incredibly beautiful. And actually, before you go, I also want to give folks reference so that they can get more of your materials. So two things. One is, would you come back? And if we can't get you in the studio, that's fine. We'd love to have you on the phone. And secondly, can you give folks the resources that you make available, how they can get to those resources?
Yes, so first of all, definitely I want to spend more time with you and come back. And if I can make it the next time I'm in the U.S. or one of the next times, I'm happy to. And yes, there are different resources to my work. One is thomashuebl.com, Thomas, the TH, and HUEBL.com is my website. And then quite soon there will come up the Celebrate Live Festival in Germany. It's a huge event where we deal with exactly these things, and I invited international speakers, and we do it since 10 years. And you can watch the live stream if you don't make it to Europe. But it's a beautiful event, and it shows a lot of the work that I'm doing in 10 days with around 1,000 people or more. And we have an academy, the Academy of Inner Science, innerscience.info. Is also where we run training programs, courses. So I think all the material should be available on there.
Wonderful. And we'll get this information up on the Cutting Edge Consciousness website as well. Thank you, Thomas, so much for spending the time with us.
Oh, thank you both.
And for those of you listening, stay tuned because we'll be right back after these messages.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
We're back on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Thank you for staying with us. We thank Thomas for being with us. It's a pity that we could not have him on for the entire show. He's in Israel and a busy guy. But
we'll have him back.
We will have him back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very moved by that. There was lots and lots and lots for me in that conversation. Very, very layered. And I know that it had a big impact on you as well. So I'm curious what it was during the break. You alluded to something, and I want to know what it was in that touched you most deeply.
Well, okay, so we started off talking about qualities and the quality of excitement. A lot of times how I've been introduced to spirituality is it serves to, a lot of this comes from the Eastern traditions, from the Indian traditions, the Buddhist traditions, where it feels like it's trying to even out the peaks and valleys, to find a kind of way of self-regulating so that I can modulate what's coming in and out. And in essence, and this could be all my own shadow stuff, be more in, I want to say control, but that is not, but anyhow, what I love about this in the way that Thomas showed up is it allows me to have the challenge. It's a bigger context for the challenges. I'm not trying to fix.
What is that context that you're seeing?
Really, I long to be part of something that is bigger than me, that is with other people, the idea of community or culture, that I feel, I have felt that the groups in my experience have, this again could be totally my shadow stuff, have let me down. And that could I be part, because the longing.
That is your shadow stuff.
I agree. So the longing to be part of something that is, go ahead.
So I have a pretty strong intuition about what was very novel for our radio show here. And that it's very easy for us to track back to what we call the reservation, which is the shadow play, which is the subconscious, which is, and so the reason that I sort of called time was because, when we say, well, I have stuff about groups, that's like a doorway swinging open to a whole bunch of story, which is still about cleaning up the subconscious. And that is critical. It's not that we bypass that. We cannot bypass that. So that is going on. At the same time, what was very present, palpably present in the way that Thomas speaks, is that the shadow work which has to do with resolving the subconscious agendas and becoming intimate with them, exists inside of something else.
That's bigger than it.
And so we have an exposure to what is holding the subconscious issues. Lots and lots and lots of what we have discussed on our program has to do with meeting the shadow and working to become more and more attuned with our subconscious drives and beginning to open to the experience, the reality that we live inside a world, a domain that is the domain of our subconscious, literally, and we are becoming conscious inside our subconscious. And as all of that is unfolding and will continue to unfold, what's holding that?
No, the bigger context. This is
and
something
that is
that
is the unconscious, which has nothing to do with the shadow. It has nothing to do with looking at our agendas. It has, all of those are a different layer of the cake. So what is the nature of the unconscious? That is experientially new ground for this program. It's felt. Sandy introduced it. I mean, she certainly broke me out of my malaise, my love affair with what is becoming very comfortable, which is processing my subconscious and looking at my stories and saying, well, I'm uncomfortable here, I'm not uncomfortable. That can really be worked through in an instant at this point.
Yeah.
And what is the being state that holds it?
Right. Well,
that's virgin territory. We can try and talk our way through it, but I think that wouldn't help the experience.
No, I'm with you. So let me back up for a second and say the compelling possibility of something that I long for, those qualities that we're going to call success, you and I are going to call success, this reimagining of success, where we started at, that has to do with what Thomas said, where you put your foot down knowing on a deep and profound level that there will be a place for it to land, right? That it isn't just a rewrote story projected out again and again and again, that tape loop is actually done, and there is a brand new possibility arriving in every moment, not held against the context of the past, but by a context that's drawing us forward, that's drawing us towards something which has all the qualities that we would associate with success. And it isn't just mechanistic, where we learn the tools and the strategies and apply them, and then as good little boys and girls, we get to advance to the next stage in a hierarchy of whatever. But I think that we talk about the future set against the backdrop of the past. So I don't want to overemphasize the past, but I don't want to dismiss it. I want to be able to integrate it, which I think is a language he used. If he didn't, I'll use it.
We're now moving into the subconscious conversation.
Right.
So
I understand.
When we're talking in numbers, if we were math people and we were talking about the set of fractions, there are no whole numbers in a set of fractions. The set of all numbers includes both fractions and whole numbers. So we're bouncing around. We are very comfortable talking about the subconscious in many, many names, shadow, or many, many names. We're very comfortable here, and we tend to go there.
Mm-hmm.
It is a discipline to be aware of it and to continue to process it, but maybe more quietly, and to explore something that is emergent.
For you.
For me, yes, exactly. But
for me, it that may not be so. I mean, it may be.
I'm only bringing it up. I'm not. This isn't a challenge.
Right.
This is not a challenge. It's not about right or wrong.
Right.
I'm pointing out that on the show we go here and we go here and we go here, and so some of what I would like to have happen in the show is I am not as interested.
Right.
In in trying to figure it out.
No, of course not. But I see what I love about this show in the middle of doing it is I love that last two segments. It feels like a propelling into something that we haven't done before. This last guest felt like a Bashar. It felt like someone who we launch a grenade in, and then everything that we've called terra
Or
firma.
Sandy.
Or Sandy, or many others who have sufficiently rocked the subconscious.
So what is it that
conversation.
exactly? That's the point. They're rocking our desire to process the subconscious, which is still very linear. You don't have to abandon logic and reason to work through the subconscious. So we're so comfortable in it.
So if it was, and I don't need to be right, but my longing to move into the place of faith where first priority, where I can put my foot down with a sense that it will land, and without it being control, there's just a place of evolution and spiritual maturity where that is so. That still eludes me. So I maybe that's how I'm dragging along the old conversation.
I have the same conversation with the same dialogue that I've had for 25 years.
Yep.
And I am understanding that in the expressing of that, it is the expression of that removes it from me. It is because it requires a certain kind of hooking up of logic and reason to explain my condition. It's sort of, it is the way that I preempt myself. I'm having trouble.
Right.
As opposed to understanding that language is the language of fractions, and you'd
rather be talking in whole numbers.
Well, they're separate. They're separate places. They're separate experiences of frequency. So when he refers to, or Eckhart refers to, or Sandy refers to being states, or Bashar and Darryl Anka refers to, they don't really so much refer to being states as they refer to frequencies and to how critical it is to know the self so that you can move beyond it. Well, you say that you're longing to move beyond it, and I am as well. When we begin to go back and calibrate the world through cutting and parsing and dicing and making these kinds of statements, it hasn't served me for so long. But to simply drop into the stillness, that is where it lives, between the words, in the space between, which is not empty. It is filled with all possibility. It is filled with the feminine energies of the feminine primal co-creative energies, pre-structure. Somebody talked about essence. It's even pre-essence. Now we're into the mystic.
Yeah.
So a grenade. My challenge to myself and to you and to the show is: can we? Do we have an interest in making a new balance about where the show is focused, so that it begins to explore these the humility of really not knowing something, really being not knowing.
I love that.
And not looking as much to... There's so many resources out there. There's so many people who are doing such great work helping folks understand their subconscious, understand their... Do we add anything to that? We do, but is there something else for us?
We'll know at some point. I love it. I mean, it challenges me because I do have comfort in tracking back to the known, but I'm committed to the unknown. I'm committed to the possibilities. So it's an interesting experience. I'm complete with all the bumps, and there are plenty, and I'm sure our listeners, viewers will be writing like mad on this show, but go for it. We're in the juice. So
this is really exciting stuff.
Yep.
Really, really exciting
and
stuff.
with that, we have to say goodbye, but we hope that you continue to watch, and we'll see where this goes. Thanks for tuning in to Cutting Edge Consciousness.